Well, my name is Eugenio Ponce. I am the export manager in charge of the European continent for Undurraga winery. And I will be here with Rafael Urrejola, who is our chief winemaker, explaining a little bit of Undurraga wines and a little bit about the winery itself. So basically, we're talking about Undurraga. Undurraga, it's a family owned vineyard. It was founded in 1885, many years ago, as a wine producer, okay, as a still wine producer, and then it has been changing the years. And in the 70s, in 1970, Undurraga started producing sparkling wines, and from the 70s, we are one of the most important wineries in Chile. So today we have a very good and interesting activity to share with you, because we are gonna try different wines of the winery. I will share with you a small presentation where we can see the different wines that we are gonna try today. So we are going to start trying and talking about Sauvignon Blanc, a very, very important variety from Chile. This Sauvignon Blanc is from our Sibaris Gran Reserva range. So then we are going to talk about the wine, about the winemaking and everything when Rafael joins the presentation. And then we are going to try two different reds. The first one is one of the most important varieties that we have in Chile, and maybe you know about it. It's a Carmener from Peumo area. And then after this Carmener, we are gonna try a Syrah from LEYDA Valley. So it's gonna be a very complete tasting, because we're gonna try very representative wines from our winery. I can see that Rafael is coming. That's very good. And as I told you before, Rafael is the chief winemaker, and he is in charge of both ranges. So it's very important that you guys, if you have any questions or doubts, please let us know, so we can discuss and we can make more like a conversation with us. So so let's start with the wines. Rafa, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
I was telling to the audience that a little bit of the winery, an introduction of the winery, and I was telling you that the chief winemaker in charge of the winemaking of our wines, of course, and I was telling them about the wines that we are going to try today: Sauvignon Blanc, Sibaris, Carmener TH, and Syrah TH as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, first, apologize. I had a technical problem here with my computer, just 5 minutes before 1. But luckily we solved it with another computer, so we're ready to go. Eugenio, are you done with the introduction?
Yes, I'm okay. So maybe we can start with the wines right now. I am handling the presentation, so you can tell me when I can change the slide.
Okay. Well, first of all, say hello to everyone. I'm Rafael Urrejola, head winemaker of Undurraga. We try to have a better location, but here we are in the winter time, and with 50% of the people doing home office, so it's hard to make a good setup for this tasting. Hopefully, in the upcoming months, we can do some connection from the vineyards or from a more exciting place than the winemaker tasting room, but it's what we get. So let's start with the presentation with the next slide. My idea is to, before tasting the wines, very briefly and not getting in a lot of depth and technical aspects, try to give you an idea about what we're doing in Chile, what we're doing in Undurraga, and why these wines are very different because of the region where they come from. So to let you know a little bit more about Chile, I will talk maybe about 5-10 minutes about Chile in general, and then we'll go to the regions where the wines are coming from, and then tasting, and of course at the end, any questions are more than welcome. So first of all, here, Eugenio, you have to be pushing because they had some effects, the slide, so you have to be pressing the button, yeah. So first of all, Chilean viticulture in Chile has changed a lot. When I started working in the 1990s, for example, 1993, all the wines from Chile were coming from the central area. We call it, in sort of a slang between winemakers, we call it the comfort area, because in the Central Valley, in the central part of Chile, we can grow any wine, very always ripe, there's no rainfall, very consistent within the years, there's no rainfall in the summer, so it's very even, and we can produce wines for supermarkets up to high-end wines in a very consistent and easy to produce. Chilean viticulture in this area is really healthy and very, naturally we can get very nice wines. But of course we wanted to make an upgrade in our wines in terms of character, in terms of identity. So in the year 2000, people started exploring different areas. Up to the north, down to the south, and upper to the mountains, Andes Mountains, and closer to the ocean. So in a way, getting away from this Central Valley and comfort area and making wines with more character, of course with more risks, but aiming to have wines that are showing something different from what Chile was known for. And then today, for example, in what was 2018, the last vineyards planted were in these areas, like in the top of the north of Chile, in the middle of the driest desert in the world, which is the Atacama Desert, and also in parallel 46, very close to the ice lands, you know, in a place called Chile Chico, some trials with the Pinot Noir. So we are expanding our surface, our area of viticulture dramatically in the last years. Some trials end in very nice bottles of wines, some trials don't, but still the spirit of all the role, but many winemakers and many wineries is to go beyond our own frontiers and try to make wines from different regions. Why is that? Is because the immense variability of climates and terroirs that we have, because of the geology. I don't want to go deep in geology of Chile, but you know, probably you heard so many earthquakes we have now. It's because we are in a corner in South America that we have a very abrupted geology. So mountains, deserts, valleys. It's very diverse at the end. And of course, also because of that, we have a lot of climate variability. We are a very long and narrow country, as you saw as you know probably, and you saw in the map before. So the different climates that we have in the north of Chile compared to the south of Chile is dramatically, it's very different. We have a desert, as I said, the driest desert in the world is Atacama in the north, and then we have a rainforests and icelands in the south. So even though that is very variable, for wine it's even more important the variability that we have from west to east because of the influence of the Andes Mountains range and the influence of the Pacific Ocean. I'm telling this because is very important for understanding later the wines that we're going to taste. If you see in the middle where it says the central plain, this is like the part of the comfort area. That's the Central Valley. Not a lot of rains in the summer. Very nice alluvial soils, nice temperatures. So everything works great for the wine. If you go up to the mountains in the Andes, you get, of course, the influence from the snow, from the ice, and the higher altitude, and you get cooler climates, so the wines change completely because you have 10, 15 degrees of difference compared to the Central Valley. And it happens the same if we go to the west, like to the left side of the slide, because of the influence of the ocean. In the Pacific Ocean in the south, where Chile is, we have the Humboldt Current, which is an Antarctic current that makes the ocean really, really cold. And that's why the beaches in Chile are fantastic, but to get in is you need to be really brave because the ocean is really, really cold. And this makes a lot of mist, a lot of cloudy, and a totally different climate, even in the same latitude, compared to the Central Valley, because of this cool influence from the ocean. So in climate, we have a huge variability, as I said, north to south, of course, because of the latitude, but also west to east or east to west, because of this geology we have and how the climate behaves because of that geology. And then, of course, we have the climate in one side, and then we have the soils, which are very, very important for the wine, as you probably know. And in Chile, in the past, we didn't talk a lot about the soils, but in the last 20 years, we have been investigating and realizing that we have part of the best soils that we can get in the world for winemaking. First of all, most of our valleys that are formed because of the geology from the Andes to the ocean, crossed by rivers, they all carry this material, this alluvial material. So we have, most of our valleys they have alluvial soils. And alluvial is gravel, you know, and probably if you read about the wines, many of the rest of the best red wines in the world, they're coming from gravel soils. You have Medoc, you have Napa Valley, you have Barossa Valley, you have Maipo Valley, Colchagua Valley in Chile, Mendoza, all of Argentina is alluvial. So the importance of gravels mainly in red wines is really, really important worldwide. And we have a lot of that soil, a lot of hectares of that type of soil. Then we have a colluvial soil, which is, it works in the sort of the same way of an alluvial soil, but the rock is more edgy, it's not rounded, and that are soils that are formed in the Piedmont, in the base of the Andes Mountains, but physically they behave pretty much the same as alluvial soil. The stones give some humidity for the vines, and also it's like a handbrake for the vigor and for the over yield of the vine, and it let us produce very concentrated grapes and small yields. Then in all the coast of Chile, close to the Pacific Ocean in the west side, we have granite. We have if you remember one of the last slides, we have a coastal mountain of range that separates the Central Valley from the ocean, and all of that coastal mountains is based on granite. So we have a lot of quartz component and mineral component in this granite, and again, other areas in the world, Alsace, some parts of Australia, the Côte Rôtie, for example, part of the north of Rhone, are vineyards that are based in granite. So we also have a world famous reference of nice wines in this kind of soils. And then, of course, we don't have a lot of the chalk type of soil, because compared to Europe, South America was not under the ocean as Europe was for millions of years. So in Europe you get a lot of chalk soils. In South America you don't get a lot, but still in Chile we have some some spots of limestone, chalky soils that are very, very interesting for wines, especially white wines. We all probably know the nice chalky reference of Burgundy, Pomerol, the Loire, even what you have in the south of England, it's on chalk, so you're producing very, very nice wines because of the importance of the soil. So taking all of these characteristics of Chile in context, here in Undurraga, we're trying to make wines much more from origins, special origins, getting away from this central valley and take advantage of the variability of climates and soils that we have, and planting and producing the right variety. And this slide is very interesting because here is a European map, and the green line is the length of Chile. Chile is 2,600 miles long, and if you put that in the European map, is all of this track. You know, it's Portugal, Spain, south of France, Italy, and you end up in Helsinki. So if you can imagine how many types of wine, regions, varieties, cultures of wine you have in all of that surface, is basically the world of wine. So it's a complete wine store, you know. And Chile has been known just for Chilean wines, which is not really good as we have so much difference of climates. So if you press again the bottom, Eugenio, so that's Chilean length. So we can produce much more than safety, easy to drink, everyday wine, because we do have a lot of different terroirs and a lot of surface and length to explore. So not a lot of people know that about Chile and Chilean wines, in part because of us. You know, in the past, Chilean people in the wine business have been much more focused in supermarket wines, cheap wines, under, I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds wine the bottle. But nowadays, most of the wineries and winemakers were exploring our territory and try to get to your market much more interesting wines, maybe a little bit higher in price, but with a quality and with a relation of quality and price that is very, I think, they're approachable wines and with a lot of quality and character. That is what we're aiming to do. So going now a little bit to the regions where we're of the wines that we will taste, or I will taste. I don't know if you all have the wines, but first wine is a Sauvignon Blanc, and it comes from the LEYDA Valley. And LEYDA.
Rafa, can you show us the label and the bottle? Do you have it there? Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is Sibaris Sauvignon Blanc from LEYDA Valley. If you press Eugenio, it will show in the map where LEYDA is. In the right side, we have Santiago, which is our capital, and it's in the middle of the Maipo Valley, so maybe it's the most renowned region we have in Chile. And LEYDA is to the west, so it's in the west side of this coastal range of mountains. So it's really facing the ocean and getting all the influence that I talked before about what the ocean makes in the climate of this area. It's about 40 kilometers from San Antonio, which is the bay. And LEYDA is a really, really cool climate compared to what we have in Maipo, even though they are in the same latitude. For example, in a summertime where the grapes are ripening, in Santiago it could be 35 Celsius degrees in the middle of the summer at 4 p.m. for example, and in LEYDA it could be 22. And that is a huge difference. It's like a totally different region. If you go to France or Spain, it's dramatically different. So the varieties behave differently. And in the 90s, we started to to plant in the Leyda Valley, in the coast part of Chile, trying to make whites and Pinot Noirs in a much better conditions and with a climate that suits better the variety compared to what people was doing before. So Leyda is a valley that is now almost 30-year-old area, so not new anymore, but compared to the rest of Chile, is one of the last really important developments of cool climate region. This is you can keep pressing, Eugenio. There will be some pictures about how close of the ocean is. Also the soil, we are talking here about some spots of chalk soil. So very important for the character and for the soul of the wine, which is maybe different to other Sauvignon Blancs that are produced in Chile in more neutral soils, not necessarily in chalk.
Fantastic picture. Would you say that we're still discovering Leyda Valley and its potential?
Well, the Leyda Valley was discovered at the end of the 90s because some winemakers were not happy, of course, with the Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnays from a warm climate, because it's not possible to make a good wine, a white wine in the same place where you're making great Cabernet Sauvignon. So they start to explore to the coast. There were lack of water, lack of people, it was a dry farm area. So some people start to develop Leyda because they really believe that we could make totally different aromatic whites and Pinot Noir. And they were right, because
exactly
after the very first harvest of the first vineyards in this region, the difference with the other Sauvignon Blancs from Chile was totally dramatically. Leyda and Casablanca were the pioneers in the cool regions developing in Chile. Press and that's it's a small appellation. It's not so you don't find a lot of wines from Leyda. It's still small. Of course, the UK market is very important for Chile, so you might find good examples of Leyda Sauvignon Blanc in different retailers, but it still is not massive. So it's still a small appellation. As I said, very close to the ocean. It's only 14 kilometers, so we get a lot of mist, a lot of wind that makes a much longer period of ripening and cooler conditions for an aromatic variety as the Sauvignon Blanc. So I'll start tasting the.
Sì, caché.
I need a spit on it. I need to drive it after this. So, well, it's 100% Sauvignon Blanc from our own state. We own a state from 2005 in the Leyda Valley. We planted in Leyda, thinking in the wines we wanted to make, taking advantage of the climate, of the wind. All the rows are facing the west, so we're getting all the wind inside the vineyards to get even cooler conditions for the grapes. And of course, we isolate the parcels where we have some chalk components in the soil to plant, especially those blocks for this range. So at the end, what we get here is a wine that this is a 2017, so it's still it's almost 3-year-old wine. Normally, people say that Sauvignon Blanc shouldn't be drunk so late, should be drunk in a year or so. But LEYDA behaves really different in that way, because in LEYDA we get the concentration and the character and the minerality, saltiness also from the ocean, and minerality from the soil that makes the wine evolve very well in time. So after 3 years, the wine is still very expressive, with a very typical LEYDA character in the nose that for me is sort of a limey, a little bit of a gooseberry leaves, you know, a little bit herbal, and with the back of a lot of citrusy aromas. It doesn't go into a tropical, exuberant, sweet kind of aromas like other parts of the world that are also, I think, very interesting. But I think LEYDA and the coast of Chile has a very typical and unique character that is not very, very exuberant, maybe a little bit more, maybe a bit austere compared to other Sauvignon Blancs, but it makes it very elegant, very fine, and very easy to drink. You know, you don't get bored about that. Maybe in terms of talking in very lightly or in big words, if we have reference, I think the coast of Chile is sort of in between New Zealand and Loire, for example. It's not as exuberant, as sweet, as tropical as maybe general Sauvignon Blanc of New Zealand could be. It's more maybe austere and mineral, maybe not as far in that sense as the Loire, but it's something in the middle. So we think, and we talk with when I go to the UK, to people involved in wines, that Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, especially from the coast of Chile, is it's very appealing for people, but people don't know a lot. You know, the first reference maybe is New Zealand and Loire, and then they don't know a lot about the coast of Chile. And it's actually a wine that is it could fit very well with different food. And also, if you wanna make a change out of your typical or favorite Sauvignon Blanc, you can get something different from the coast of Chile. So it's our role to communicate better what we're doing, because of course in supermarkets you can get a lot of Chilean Sauvignon Blanc that is quite basic, because it comes from, again, what we call the comfort area. So it's not the right place actually to make a Sauvignon Blanc, but it's cheap and it's easy to drink. But we can offer something much more interesting than that. And that is the case of this Sibaris. That is a wine that it changed in the glass. It gives you more layers of aromas. Now I'm getting sort of a gunpowder aromas, typical from cool climate whites, and typical from the chalk influence of the soil. And in the palate, I think it's a wine that brings you to the origin, because it's quite salty, quite mineral. It really expressed the character of a cool climate. Not a lot of sweetness, a lot of sugar. It's much more lean and bright and very vibrant in the palate. And I think it's a very has a lot of drinkability if we talk about having it by itself, or also with food, because it has a nice weight. It has a very nice structure coming from this chalk, and also because the way we produce the wine is we keep the wine on the lees for 5 to 6 months, and that give us some creaminess, some weight in the palate that holds very well the bright acidity and the bright mineral characters that the wine has in the palate. So at the end, it's quite balanced in the palate. You can get vibrancy, the tension of a Sauvignon Blanc, but also a nice creamy weight and a very nice texture. Here I can see there's a question here, Eugenio. I don't know if we'll get the question at the end, or I have a question mark here. Or maybe it's from
the
before.
Question is,
are you there?
the translation of Sibaris. We can answer that. It's
You're gonna go for that?
Yeah, Sibaris. We call this wine Sibaris, and we named after the wine after the Sibaritas, these Roman guys that enjoys life, basically enjoys good food, good wine, and everything. That's why the wine it calls Sibaris. It's from Sibarita.
Yeah, this range we developed, especially thinking in the on that days in the on trade.
It's a gastronomic range, no?
Yeah, gastronomic range. So they play there with the Sybarites, and Sibaris was the city of the Sybarites, which is, at least in the Spanish language, is very used the term to refer to bon vivant, or people that really like to enjoy wine and food and party, you know, like probably everyone, and we are missing it a lot now. But well, maybe with the bottle of Sibaris we can remember those days. Shall we go to the next one?
Yeah, correct. Let's go to the next one.
Go for next slide also.
Okay.
So the next wine is also from the same area, from LEYDA, but here we are in the opposite expression of the area. When we planted LEYDA, as I said before, we really focus in Sauvignon Blanc, a bit of Chardonnay for our high-end sparklings, and Pinot Noir, because the soil, the climate, everything was telling us that LEYDA must be the place to grow very, very exciting wines of those varieties. But as we all want here we all like to explore, we thought that even reds of climate that we had, and also with a fantastic slope that we found in the land before we planted the vineyard, that was facing north. So here we are in the south hemisphere. So if a slope is facing north, it's getting all of the sun during the day, and with a fantastic granite soil, very decomposed granite, with a lot of quartz, that we thought immediately could be very interesting for a cool climate Syrah, having in reference fantastic wines we all taste from the northern Rhone. So we didn't know exactly if the grapes were going to ripe, so we planted this vineyard very densely. It's 1 per 1 meter, so it's 10,000 vines per hectare. It's planted 1 per 1 on sticks, so like an Hermitage style, with the 2 or 3 canes with a stick, and without any irrigation. So the vines were forced to go very, very deep in the granite to get humidity and nutrients. And naturally, they produce 2 or 3 clusters with very small berries that, even in a cool climate as LEYDA, with the wind, with the mist, and with the very low temperatures, it could ripe at the end of the season. So we started as a trial. We bought this wine in 2010, and 2 or 3 years later, it became one of the most renowned and awarded wines from Undurraga overall. So it was one of these trials that really end up in a good result. to be honest, many just fall apart in the middle of the road. But this Syrah from LEYDA, it makes us really proud, because LEYDA was not a region supposed to produce a good Syrah or a good red. All the coins were put in the wine, Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir, and this TH Syrah from LEYDA really changed that. Also, we had even in cool seasons, we had to pick later, and the wines it's more herbal than fruity, as this one in 2018. But even with those changes of character, because the wines really follows the expression of the vintage, the wine shows really well. So it's one of the wines that really show the soul and the aim of this range. This range is called TH, stands for Terror Hunter. So it's like a hunting of different origins, terroirs, and adventures in terms of planting vineyards or discovering pre-existing vineyards to make wines, again, as I said before, out of this comfort area. So really going to extremes, to cooler regions, to complicate soils, complicate topographies, complicate slopes, trying to get much more character in the wine than just the typical nice fruity expression that we have in Chile. So if we taste the wine now, it's much of a cool climate Syrah expression. If we talk in big words, it's not closer to a Barossa Syrah, not even a Southern Rhone. It's much more. It's much closer to maybe a Northern Rhone type of expression. It's a New World wine anyway, so I don't want to compare it in that sense. But just like a style, it goes closer to that. So it's not the typical Chilean fruity, generous, alcoholic, sweet and soft red. That I don't have any problem with that. But we have a lot of wines in that style. This is a much more herbal, tarry, mineral sort of nose. Also, this is, of course, the origin, the cool climate conditions from LEYDA, but also in the winemaking, we try to take advantage of that. So we pick quite early, as the earliest we can, the earlier we can, in order to have a lower alcohol. This wine is below 13.5, it's about 13.2, which is not typical for a Chilean red. Then you get much more expression of the place. You get all the herbs, all the tarry notes of Syrah from cool climate. And in the winery, we ferment with native yeast, not any correction. And then it goes to big foodress, to large foodress of 5,000 liters to keep there and stay and age for about 14 months. So here there's not any influence of new oak, toasty, sweet flavors. It's much more the expression of one particular place.
Rafa, we have another question. The guys said that Chile is well known by Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, for example. But do we have do you think that this kind of cool climate style of Syrah has potential in Chile?
Yeah, of course. Well, that's a very good question, because we live out of Cabernet Sauvignon, and in the late years from Carmener, in all different levels. Chilean industry and all of us, we live out of making safety wines from the Central Valley, and also our history and our flag maybe is still very, I think, refined and classic Cabernet Sauvignon. So even us in Undurraga, we make a couple of wines that are very classic Maipo Cabernet, and I think they're fantastic wines, and I enjoy making it and of course selling them. So probably it would take a long time to make that change, because Chile is known about that, and we know it's something that we do very well. But it doesn't mean that we don't want to explore. And I think the potential of red wines in cool climates in Chile is nowadays we see it's almost unlimited, because we're selling just a few bottles of cool climate reds worldwide as an industry. And I think if we look at the critics, the awards, the reception in the markets of this kind of wine, maybe still for people that know more about wine, maybe not the more regular consumer, but the reception that these wines have in different markets is incredible. When we start making this kind of wine, I thought we could sell 3,000, 4,000 bottles at the most, and we're selling maybe 3 or 4 times that quantity. So and in a very good price. So I think the potential is extraordinary in terms of surface that we can plant areas, because there's LEYDA in cool climate. We also have Casablanca. We have Limarí, that is very exciting. We have Malleco in the south. We have Elqui in the north. So there are maybe 5 or 6 cool climate regions that are making, of course, maybe 78% of the wines are whites or Pinot Noir, but the 20% of reds coming from there are really, really exciting. So if you have the chance to try this wine or any other Chilean wine from a cool region in reds, and you like more vibrancy, maybe a little bit more firming tannins, not so sweet fruit and more herbal notes, I think there are a lot of wines to try out of Chile.
And you know what? That from a selling point of view, consumers are looking for fresher wines with less alcohol content in general. I mean, in general, over the world. You know, so there is potential, definitely.
So going back to the wine, it shows that, you know, in the palate, you don't get a lot of alcohol because it's not there. You get a lot of concentration of fruit and herbs, and you get some nice tannins. Even 2018 was a very cool vintage, but the tannins is still firm, but round, very integrated to the wine. And same as the Sauvignon Blanc, has a vibrancy that is very typical from LEYDA. It's a wine that in some way you can feel that it's not coming from a sunny, overexposed, warm area. So it's you can get the cool climate influence in the profile of flavors, and also in the sensation of the wine, in the tension. The mineral components in the soil also play an important role in the way you feel the wine in the palate, with that minerality, saltiness, depends of how you want to call it, you know, tension, vibrancy. I think is a vibrancy that maybe is the word that really for me define LEYDA wines. Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. LEYDA is talk about very vibrant, crunchy fruit with this right amount of acidity and not a lot of sweetness in the wine. So I think it's a good example of a cool climate Syrah and a cool climate red from Chile that are being made in the last years. So maybe we can go to the next wine.
Perfect.
And the third wine is completely the opposite of what we're talking. It's a Carmener from the Cachapoal Valley, from Peumo, and also from the TH range, Terror Hunter range. And we were talking before about LEYDA as a cool region. Now we're talking a wine that is coming from the central valley, or the central part of Chile. It's 110 kilometers south of Santiago, southwest. And southwest because this vineyard particularly is on the western part of the Cachapoal Valley. So still very warm. It's a warm climate, warm days. But as in TH, I'm really keen in the drinkability of the wine. And I think that is very related to not a lot of alcohol and a bright acidity and a nice crunchy fruit. So to make a Carmener, we really need warm climate, because otherwise it doesn't ripe very well. And if you taste cheap Carmener or Carmener in the old days, they could be very green, because we didn't know that we need to wait a lot to pick. And also we cannot over yield the vines, because they really need to get out of the pyracines of the green flavors, and it takes a while in Carmener. So Carmener basically really needs a warm climate to grow, but I didn't want to make this Carmener out of a central warm area. I wanted to go a little bit western to get some cooler nights, more breeze in the afternoon, and then have a better balance between the fruit, the generosity of the Carmener, with a nice acidity and vibrancy, and again, drinkability. So Peumo is an area that is, in Chile, we consider maybe the best area to make Carmener, fine Carmener, because of that, because you have a nice combination of old vines. We're talking about 35, 40-year-old vines settled like in the 80s in Peumo. Warm days, but quite cool nights to make the wines more balanced than the Carmeners we get inland the valley. Press the next one. I got low talking. So here we are about almost 60 kilometers from the ocean. So the influence is not as important or as significant as we were looking in LEYDA region, but still we get some wind, and we get these afternoons with the lower temperatures, so the vines can rest a bit at the end of the day of this warm climate during the summer, and that condition make it possible to keep a little bit higher the acidity in the grapes, and to pick a ripe skin berry, but with a nice fruit and acidity inside. So it gives us the chance to have a wine that is not the typical Carmener in terms of greenness in a bad way, and also it's not a typical Carmener in terms of just ripe fruit, because a lot of people are trying to get away from these herbal, spicy, peppery notes. But I personally think that Carmener is like that. You know, it always has some red pepper, black pepper, even green pepper notes going around. And I think it's if it's well balanced with the background of fruit, it makes a really very nice and appealing wine. And of course, we sell much more Carmener in the UK and in Europe that are used to those kind of profile flavors than in the US, for example. The palate is quite a bit more sweeter than most of our palates. So they're really keen in not liking any peppery herbal notes. So a lot of Carmeners in Chile have gone in that way, that I think is a mistake, because you can make a jammy wine out of any part in the world, you lose character, you lose expression of the variety and expression of a site. So in TH, we're trying to express the area, Pelmo, and also express the typical characteristic of Carmenere. That I'm tasting. This is a 2017. So it's quite a warm, one of the warmest vintage that we had in the last years. And even though we have this warm vintage, the wine is express a lot of spices, a lot of peppery notes, and sorry about that. And in the back you get a lot of berries, blackberries. For me, I get blackberries, raspberries, and a nice background of fruit, but combined and making the wine more complex with these spicy characters out of the skins of the Carmenere. Some grilled bell pepper, black pepper, even some herbs coming out. And this wine is aged in barrels, in a Bordeaux barrel, so 225 liter barrels, about 25% new oak. I don't want to print the wine with a lot of sweetness or toast notes from the oak, but I think Carmenere, especially if we pick very early, as I do in the company, we need a little bit of sweetness and structure from the barrel to make a more balanced wine. So even if it is, as I said, 2017, a very warm year, the wine I think is very fresh. I find in the palate more red fruit than black fruit, which I prefer much better in wines. More refreshing, nice acidity. Carmenere naturally is not a tannic variety. Normally has quite soft tannins because it's a big berry. It's much bigger than a berry of Cabernet, for example, where you get a lot of structure out of the skins. The Carmenere berry is larger, so we get more juice out of the same amount of surface of skin. So the wine naturally is very juicy, soft, and easy to drink. So again, in TH, we're trying to, Terra Hunter range, we're trying to really show the diversity of Chile that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the variability of climates, the variability of soils, of varieties. And I think Carmenere plays an important role because it really shows what Carmenere is. It's, maybe it's not much more than that, but it's also not less than that. You know, it's a very, I think, juicy, interesting wine to taste. It's very friendly. It's very flexible with food because as it's not a tannic wine, so it can go with a typical food that goes with red wines, but also it can go well with fish, for example, or food that is considered more to go to white wines because the tannic reaction in the palate is not pleasant with the fish, but with the grassy or salmon or grassy white fish, you can even have a Carmenere because you won't get that because the tannins are not so strong. So I think it's a variety that is very pleasant to drink in a like in an informal base, and it's very typical from Chile. So it was important for us in Terra Hunter to have a good example of Carmenere in the portfolio.
Rafa, and I have a question regarding the aging potential of this kind of wines, because you just told us that that it's not like a Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not as strong as a Cabernet Sauvignon. So what is more or less the potential of this kind of Carmenere?
Well, it depends on the Carmenere, because there are some wineries that are making a Carmenere looking for more aging potential. So they're blending. Normally Carmenère is blended with Petit Verdot, with Cabernet Franc, even with Cabernet Sauvignon, to have more structure and then to have a longer life. So talking about this particular Carmenère, I think is a wine that must be drunk in the maybe 5-6 years time, because I think the charm of the wine is the fruit, is the soft tannins, is the juicy sensation, and in the time we will lose a bit that sort of soul that Carmenère has. So for this Carmenère and for the Carmenères I'm making in the company, they're a bit they have I think less aging potential than the Cabernets in general. But it doesn't mean that, for example, other wineries are making Carmenets with a stronger structure, blended, or from very, very low yields, that you can have an aging potential that is much longer than that. As a variety, talking in general, I think Cabernet Sauvignon has a more aging potential than the Carmenère. And if we talk about the Syrah from LEYDA, I think the aging potential of Syrah from LEYDA is very, it could be many years, more than 10 years, because of the low pH, the high acidity, the tannins that it has, and the less alcohol, everything, that balance, it will keep in the bottle much better. Even though they're young vines, I think the aging potential of the Syrah from LEYDA, for example, easily 10 years, the wine will be as interesting as it is right now, maybe more. Maybe the Carmenère, I will give 5 or 6 years to enjoy in the best performance. The wines are strong enough, are well made enough. I think they're coming from good vineyards, so they will last. After the 6th year, they won't go, strictly down. I think that the wine can last, but I think the best part of life of these years maybe could be what I said.
That was exactly the question that we just received about the aging potential of Syrah.
Cool.
Hi, Rafa. So I've been watching the background, learning lots. How are you? I have one question as well. What do you consider, or where do you consider to be the next undiscovered region in Chile?
Wow, this is a good question.
Thank you.
Very good.
About 5 years ago, many of the attention of winemakers was in the north of Chile. There are fantastic places in the north of Chile, very close to the desert. Some valleys that cross the desert of Atacama. In the north of Chile, also you can go higher in altitude. We always have the reference of our neighbors, Argentina, that they exploit very well the altitude differences that they have, and that's basically because the Andes Mountains. The Andes Mountains were formed by a plaque, that is pushing the continent. So I put my hand, but the Andes Mountains in our side is like this, and in Argentina is like this, because we have been pushing from this side. So it's very steep in Chile, so it's hard to go altitude. So it's very interesting what's happening in the north of Chile in terms of high altitude vineyards, but we have a drought. This has been very dry in the last years, so it's been hard to develop, and that has changed the point of attention in the south of Chile. I think the south of Chile has many regions that are under-discovered yet. Nowadays it's becoming very trendy what's going on in the dry farm area in Maule, that is about 400 kilometers south of Santiago. Immediately after that, we have the Itata Valley, which is cooler valley with very old vines, Sanso, Baiz, Semillon, bringing very exciting wines. And then there's Biobío and Malleco, that is even further south valleys, where we are producing very nice Chardonnays and Pinot Noir. And I think all of the south has a lot of potential to be discovered. So it's a hard question, because I think we still have a lot to explore. In 5 years ago, we made a trial in Chile, in a place called Chile Chico, which become the southernmost vineyard in the world, because it's even southern of Central Otago. We made a few bottles, but we could make wine 1 year out of 5 years, so it was quite hard to be consistent. But we have some islands in the south. Chiloé Island, for example, some people are planting. I think there's many places to explore, and even I know one guy that planted vines in Easter Island. So it can go even further as far as that. So I think we have a lot of time to explore.
Yeah, a lot of extreme terroir to explore.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been very informative and wines are amazing. Thank you.
No, our pleasure. I think it's very interesting for us to show a little bit of wines, a little bit of Chile. I think not a lot of people know this variability we have, and I'm sorry if I was too long in that, but I think it's important to, in order to understand the wines, it's very important to know where they come from. And Chile is much more than Chile. You know, it's a lot of regions, a lot of climates, a lot of topographies different. And thank you very much for the chance to show this.
No worries. Thank you very much, guys, and thank you everybody for watching. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
It's been a pleasure.